My name is Linda Carson, and if someone had told me just a few years ago that my life would take a turn like this, I would have laughed and shaken my head. At 58 years old, I had come to believe that life had already shown me most of what it had to offer. I wasn't bitter, but I was settled. That's the word. My husband, Daniel, passed away 8 years ago, and though I carried his memory in my heart every single day, I accepted that my chapter with deep love had closed. I focused on my daughter, my small circle of friends, my garden, and my work as a librarian. But then something happened that turned my world upside down in the most unexpected way. It began one cool spring morning. The air was crisp, the kind that fills your lungs and makes you feel alive, and I decided to take a walk before heading into the library. My neighborhood had always been quiet, the kind of place where you knew people by name and waved from your front porch. That morning, as I turned the corner by Mrs. Patterson's place, I noticed a moving truck parked in front of the old Jenkins house. The place had been empty for nearly 2 years after the Jenkins moved closer to their grandchildren. I stopped for a moment, curious. Boxes were stacked on the driveway, and a man was directing the movers. From a distance, I guessed he might have been in his early 60s, tall with broad shoulders and salt and pepper hair. He had that look of someone who had spent his life working with his hands, but carried himself with quiet confidence. I didn't think much of it and continued my walk. Later that afternoon, as I trimmed my roses, he walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice deep but warm. "I'm Mark Reynolds. Just moved in next door." I straightened up, brushing the dirt off my gloves. "Linda Carson. Welcome to the neighborhood. It's been a while since anyone lived in that house." He smiled, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes. "Well, I'm glad to be here. It feels like the kind of place where you can breathe a little easier." We chatted briefly, mostly polite introductions, but there was something about him. His presence was calming, grounded, and I found myself thinking about him later that evening as I sat reading on my porch. I shook it off. It was just neighborly curiosity, I told myself. Nothing more. Over the next few weeks, I saw more of Mark. Sometimes he'd wave as he worked on his yard. Sometimes we'd exchange a few words about the weather or the best place in town to get fresh produce. He had retired recently from a long career as a firefighter and decided to move closer to his sister, who lived just a few miles away. There was a steadiness to him, a strength that wasn't loud but reassuring. One Saturday, as I struggled with a stubborn lawnmower that refused to start, I heard his voice. "Need a hand?" I laughed, slightly embarrassed. "I think this old thing has decided it's had enough of me." He crouched down, checked a few things, and within minutes had it running. "Sometimes it just needs a little coaxing," he said, grinning. That small moment turned into coffee on my porch, then into longer conversations about life, family, and everything in between. He told me about his late wife, how he had lost her 5 years ago, and how hard it had been to find his footing again. I shared stories about Daniel and how raising my daughter alone shaped me in ways I never expected. We didn't rush, didn't force anything. It was simply two people connecting slowly, gently. As the weeks became months, I realized something was happening inside me. I felt lighter, happier. I caught myself looking forward to his company, to the way he listened without judgment and shared without hesitation. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years, and sometimes, when our hands brushed as we passed something to each other, there was a spark that I couldn't ignore. One evening in late summer, we sat outside watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold. The air was warm, filled with the sound of crickets. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "Linda, can I be honest with you?" I nodded, my heart unexpectedly racing. I didn't think I'd ever feel this again. Not at my age. But I find myself looking forward to every moment I get to spend with you. You make me feel alive in a way I thought was behind me. His words struck something deep inside me. I had been so careful not to label what was happening, not to admit even to myself how much he had begun to mean to me. But hearing him say it aloud broke through all the walls I had built. "Mark," I whispered, my throat tight. "I feel the same way. I never expected it either." We sat in silence after that, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. From that night on, our bond deepened. We went on small adventures, driving to the farmer's market on weekends, trying out little diners neither of us had visited, walking along the river trail while sharing stories of our younger years. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about presence, about knowing someone saw you, truly saw you, and cared. Of course, there were moments of doubt. I worried what people might say, especially my daughter, Rachel. She had always been protective of me after Daniel passed, and I wasn't sure how she would take the news. When I finally told her, she was quiet at first. "Mom," she said carefully, "I just don't want to see you get hurt." "I know, sweetheart," I replied. "But this isn't about filling a void. It's about finding joy again. And Mark brings that into my life." After meeting him herself, Rachel softened. She saw the kindness in him, the way he respected me, the way he made me laugh. Soon, she began to encourage it, even teasing me about how I blushed when his name came up. The seasons changed, and with them, so did my understanding of what it meant to live fully. Love doesn't belong to youth alone. It doesn't disappear with age. If anything, it becomes richer, deeper, more intentional. At 58, I found myself feeling like a woman rediscovering the beauty of life, not just surviving but thriving. There was one particular night that stays with me. It was winter, and snow had blanketed the town in quiet stillness. Mark invited me over for dinner. He had cooked a simple meal, roast chicken, vegetables, and warm bread, and we sat by the fire afterward, sipping tea. He reached for my hand, his touch steady and warm. "Linda," he said softly, "I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I want to spend it with you." Tears welled in my eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude. "I want that too," I whispered. That night, I realized something powerful. Love doesn't come with an expiration date. It finds you when it's meant to, even if you've convinced yourself your story has already been written. At my age, I never expected to feel butterflies, to smile at the sound of a voice, to dream of tomorrow with someone new. But I did. And because of that, my life was changed forever.